Tried to bargain with God, like, hey God, if I do this, then you got to do this. How do we negotiate with God? And how do we get what we want? Because God clearly has something we need, that forgiveness and that grace and that mercy. So surely there's got to be some way we can get a contract going or negotiate that. Actually, it's even better than that. There is no negotiation. There is no contract. There's something amazing about the grace that God has in store for you and for me. And we're going to talk about that today on Coffee Creek Church at Home. Well, we are starting the point of faith. That's what we've been talking about. This is our third time together on this topic, and we've walked through these big ideas of where does our faith begin, and how did the early church have this concept of faith, and what were their kind of first steps into it. We've looked at some really big ideas so far, talking about God's activity in the world and what faith means for us and kind of where the starting point is. Last week, if you recall, we kind of ended on rules, and we talked about what rules were like and how that plays a part of most religions, but it's a little bit different in the Christian faith. Today we're going to dive into this idea of how do I negotiate with God? It seems like everyone in the world is trying to negotiate with God. It seems like most religions are focused on that, and most ideologies are focused on that. So how does that work for the Christian faith, and what does that look like? So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm super excited to share this new teaching with you. My name is Clark Fraley. I'm the lead pastor here at CoffeeCreek.Church, and we are delighted that you're joining us for this church at home experience. And I wanted to let you know about a couple of cool things that we can do. The first thing is, if you have kiddos, we have some online content. I'm going to put that up on the screen for you to check this website out. After this time together that we have teaching, I want you to check this out if you've got kiddos. It is CoffeeCreek.Church/kids. That will take you to a Google Doc that has lots of links in it. Basically, you go to the age grouping for your kiddo, and there are games and music and some amazing Jesus-centered teaching for your kiddos right there on your device, or you can shoot it up to your TV screen with Apple Play or like a Chromecast, or you can do it on a phone or a tablet or a computer. But basically, it's kind of like a Netflix-type experience for kiddos, and it has everything that we do in person with our kids. So there's just some amazing music we've licensed for this, some great teaching, some fun games. There's a download called the Parent Queue that's a PDF just for you if you're a parent or guardian of a kiddo. And it has some awesome teaching tips where you can do some little activities right at home to reinforce that week's teaching. So this is fresh content every single week, provided completely free of charge to you. If you would, take your cell phone out right now, and we're going to do some good. This is a cool thing that we do every time that we meet together. We check in to do good. So if you'll check in on Facebook and or Instagram. So you can check in on both and get 2 check-ins. But if you take a picture of your TV or your computer, your tablet, whatever you're watching on right now, and if you'll just go ahead and check in on Instagram with that, you'll use the geotagging feature, which just says, like, I'm at this place, and you'll make sure to say it's at Coffee Creek Church. If you're on Facebook, you start a post, and you check in at Coffee Creek Church. For every 10 check-ins, it will be another brick to build a school in Senegal. And this is through a group called Build On. Every month, we partner with a different group to do good. This month, we partnered with Build On. You can use the hashtag #BricksForSchools. That's bricks and the number 4 in schools in your message of your post. That will help draw awareness to what we're doing. And you'll also help people know about Coffee Creek Church, that they can find us online. And they can find us every single Sunday at 9:30 or 11 a.m. And we would love to invite more of your family and friends to join us and be a part of that. And this is a great way to get the word out about our church and also to let folks know. Now, keep your phone out, especially if it is your first time. I have a special offer for you. If it's your first time here with us or you've joined us and you've never texted into this number, we have a free gift we'd like to send to you, a book called How Good is Good Enough by Andy Stanley. We love Andy's writings and work, and we've used a lot of their church resources and materials. In fact, the entire Starting Point series has been developed from some tools that North Point's developed. And so if you would like this free book, it is a great read. It goes over what the gospel is all about and why Jesus is such good news for us today. And so if you're wondering, you're struggling with that, how do I know if I'm good enough? How do I know where God's standards are? This is an excellent book. It's one of my favorite books. It's such a quick read. It is not difficult at all. It's less than 100 pages, and you will enjoy this book. Well, if it's your first time, we'd love to send this to you in the mail for free. You can just text the word book. You don't need the quotes. Just text the word itself, book, in the message, and then text it to the number 405-708-7341. This goes to my cell phone, and so I'll be contacting you and saying, hey, we're shipping this book out to you. Thanks so much for joining us. But we have a free gift. Every time someone new comes to our church online or church in person, we like to just give them something free and say, hey, we're so glad that you're here today. This is for you. So again, free gift, text the word book to 405-708-7341. We're able to build schools in Senegal. We're able to give books away. We're able to create kids' content and give that away, all because people call this place home and they give. Whether you are giving for the first time, you're online with us. We've had several new givers in the last month that have stepped up and said, you know what, this is my church home. I'm at home right now. I'm not going in person, but you know what? this is my church home. We have people that live out of state that have said, yeah, this is my church home. And so if this is your church home, if you want to support the good work that we're doing, we would love to partner with you. You can give online at ccgive.com, very simple website. Takes you directly to our online giving form, and you can set up giving one gift. You can give one gift today. You can give a gift every week or every month. You can do what we call recurring giving, which is very helpful, helps us to stabilize and to do more good in the community and online. But all of this, everything you see today, everything that we're able to do through technology, whether it's our YouTube channel, it's our online broadcast through Facebook, or even our apps that we have, like on the Fire TV app or the Roku app, all of that is provided for by the people that call this place home, that partner with us, 100% supported by you. So thank you so much for giving and being a part of that. If you'd like to just mail it in, you can give to CoffeeCreek.Church, P.O. Box 30934, Edmond, Oklahoma 73003. Whatever way you choose to give, we thank you so much for partnering with Coffee Creek Church. So starting point is what we are talking about, and this is our part 3 of this teaching. And in part 3, we are going to dive into the idea of negotiation and contracts, and what is this faith really all about? How do we make a deal with God? So, how do we say, hey, God, here's what I'll do if you'll follow through with this? And is that even part of the conversation? Because it seems to be a big part of the conversation of almost every religion in the world. So how do we get in on that? How do we get in on those contracts and those deals that are made with God? That's what we're going to talk about today. I want to just look at last week by way of review. We ended on this idea that rules are a confirmation of a relationship with God. So we ended on this idea that rules aren't made to find God. You can't follow the 10 Commandments closely enough and become a Christ follower. Basically, rules say that you're already in relationship with God. I kind of use the terminology of guardrails, that like once you have a relationship with Jesus, once you begin to follow him, the rules are put in place not to harm you or to hurt you, but just to kind of give you guidelines, those guardrails, so you don't fall off of the path of becoming more like Jesus. We use the word discipleship for that. That means becoming a little bit more like Jesus tomorrow than you were yesterday. And so as we start to climb that path towards becoming like Jesus, there are lots of temptations, right? We're still human. To say, oh, I give up on this, it's too difficult, or I want out of this, I didn't sign up for all this, or maybe whatever it is. And so the rules are kind of like guardrails to keep us on the path to becoming more like Jesus. Rules sometimes can feel a little overbearing. They can sometimes feel heavy to us. But at the end of the day, they are intended to help us. Now, one problem I would say with rules is sometimes it can draw up some feelings in us, maybe of shame, maybe of guilt, maybe of I'm not good enough and I can't meet this rule or this standard, and so that must mean there's something intrinsically wrong with me. And when that guilt and shame comes up, know that those are not from God. Those are not feelings that he wants you to have, because you're his creation. And he wants you to follow the path of Jesus, or what we call the way, becoming more like Jesus. So how do we recover then? When we fall short of God's ideal for our life, when we fall short of the plan, right? Whether it's something we've set up or something we know is a clear standard from God, how do we recover? Like, how do we get up and dust ourselves off and keep marching forward? Well, some people try to wheel and deal with God. They try to play, let's make a deal. And they try to bargain with God. And you've heard people say this, like, God, if you get me out of this jam, I'm in, then I'm going to, for the rest of my life, I'm going to go to church. Or for the rest of my life, I'm going to start giving and being generous at church. Or, you know what, next time Pastor Clark has me do something, I'm going to say, yep, I'm going to do it. But you got to get me out of this jam first, God. You do your job, and then I'll totally do it. The problem with that is so many times we make those deals, and then, of course, we don't keep our end of the bargain. I mean, this is the most classic trick in human history. Every person seems like they've tried this. The Romans, they would try this all the time. In fact, they had a saying, the gods favor those who are best prepared. And so, they would think that it was all about their activity in the world. You see, we don't have the terms of military and the trench confessions, right? We don't have that for no reason. There's this concept that when kind of we're really sick or really scared, that we'll try to bargain with God. We'll try to make this deal with God. Hey, God, I'm going to sacrifice, some animals or some crops or a future child I'll name after you, or I'll do this activity, or I'll become really generous. If you just give me $1 billion, I'll give $1 million away. Right? We try to make these kind of deals with God, and 100% of the time, we never sometimes keep up with these, right? I mean, we never keep up with these. So often, we get out of the jam, and then we're like, okay, I'm good now. I think I figured that one out on my own. I'll just go back to my old ways. And that's the problem with trying to bargain with God. Or, maybe you've seen people, or maybe you've experienced this, try to outrun your mistakes. Like, if I just keep busy, then maybe those won't catch up with me. Those lies, I'll just add another lie and another lie and another layer. Or maybe you've said, hey, I'll just drown it out. I'll drown out my problems with drinking or with drugs or just busyness in general. I won't hear it. Or I'll get money. I'll get a lot of money and I'll power and control. Or I'll give a lot of money. I mean, there's a lot of different ways people try to cope with this problem. Some people are workaholics. Some people are sacrificeaholics. I'll volunteer until I burn out. And they approach God in this way, and there are two big assumptions at this point. And this is what's funny. The assumptions are, first of all, God knows I exist, so he knows that I exist, and he needs or that I need him in some way. I have this, jam I'm in. So God knows I exist and knows about this situation. And second of all, I have something God needs. Because you can't negotiate if you don't have something that the other person needs, right? You can't be like, look, I'm going to need $1 million. And they're saying, okay, you're like, no, I just need it. Well, that's not negotiation. That's just you getting something for free. That's the lottery. So no, a negotiation is you have this that I need, and I will then do these actions, or I will work for you, or I will trade you. Like there's something that happens in a negotiation. And so if you're going to negotiate with God, you assume, A, he knows you exist, and B, he has something you need. And that is really the crux of this problem, isn't it? Because virtually all religious systems operate in this way. You have to take the sacrifice to the altar, or you have to burn this flavor of incense, or you have to pray in this certain direction, or you have to commit your life to this, or you have to not do this, or whatever it is in those systems. It assumes that God knows you exist and that God needs you to do something. Like he has some sort of need that if you don't meet that need, oh no, he doesn't have that. The Christian faith then is different in that our key thing is the resurrection. And the key thing to resurrection is understanding that Jesus died and then lived again. That is the key, not that you have something God needs, but that God had something that you needed instead. So you might kind of wonder about the resurrection. That may be your crisis of faith, right? Your crisis of belief, if you want to say it that way. You may say, boy, I like a lot of stuff in Christianity, but it's just this resurrection thing. I don't know about that part. But that's okay, because even at that level, you're acknowledging that you understand for sure that God doesn't negotiate with us. And that's the first really big point here today for us. God doesn't negotiate. God doesn't need you to be busy, to make lots of cash, sacrifice a bunch of stuff, make a lot of empty promises you won't keep. The Christian faith is not based on a transactional model. He doesn't need anything from you, but he does want something for you. And that is the big, if I were to say kind of a deeper explanation of what I said a couple weeks ago when I talked to the students at our student camp, here's the big crux of our faith that is different than other world religions, than other religious systems, than other ideologies and philosophies. God doesn't need something from you. He wants something for you. And that's a whole different way of thinking, and that is turning all the religious systems in the world upside down completely because it's a different model. You see, the Christian faith is really the only one that's not based on a transactional model. It's not a business transaction, not a contract that you sign. There's no negotiation. You can't negotiate with God on this thing. It's not like I do this and you do. No, it doesn't work that way at all. In fact, it is the free gift model that God has chosen. And Jesus is completely free to us. There's nothing that we can do to earn that. We can't buy it. It is a gift given to us. Jesus is a free gift. And the gift, ultimately, if we want to package it in one neat word, is grace. And the reason it's so amazing is because it's completely unmerited, completely undeserved. But it is free, and it's available. And the shocking thing is that in some people's lives, it goes unreceived. A gift that sits under the tree. I remember thinking about that a long time ago. The idea that, because this happens sometimes, probably happened in your family, a birthday present or a Christmas present, didn't make it out of the closet or under the bed or wherever it was hidden, didn't make it out in time for the event. And years later, you come and find this. Maybe this hasn't happened to you, but it did happen to me. And you go, what is this? And you open it up and you go, oh, yeah, that was for you. Sorry. I know it's a couple years old and the batteries have corroded and the thing's worthless now. But you know what? It was the thought that counted. But that's the way it is in so many people's lives. God has this beautiful gift in Jesus, this gift of grace. It's so amazing. And then it just sits there. Because people get concerned about the rules. I don't know if it's time to open it yet or not. I don't know what kind of negotiation I got to get in with this God. What kind of deal do I got to make here? And that's how we think. We think transactionally. Like, what does God want from me? And so we think it's got to be, because that's how everyone has dealt with us in life. And you got to understand your Creator doesn't deal with you like everybody else in life. He's not wanting a receipt and a contract and a negotiation. He's wanting to give you something free. And I think sometimes that's the hang-up, is that we live in such a transactional world. It's difficult for us to accept the truth that someone cares about us and loves us so much that they don't want anything back, that they did everything for us. That's in spite of who we are, in spite of our bad habits and our hang-ups, our sin. God just loves us, and He gives us that gift for free. Well, I want to look at a story that illustrates this. Paul writes to the Ephesians Church, and he writes to them in a way to try to explain these concepts in a very understandable format. So let's look at that together. Ephesians Chapter 2. As for you, you were dead in your transgressions and sins, in which you used to live when you followed the ways of this world, and the ruler of the kingdom of the air, the spirit who is now at work in those who are disobedient. You see, it's sin that separates us from God. It makes us dead. It makes us dead in our sin. But it's not the end of the story. That's the beautiful thing. All of us, everyone, also lived among them at one time, gratifying the cravings of the flesh and following its desires and thoughts, the evil things that are selfish and self-centered. But like the rest, we were by nature deserving of wrath. It's that nature that, should make God angry. He's given us everything. He's given us all provision. He's created us, and we turned on Him. Yes, that is worthy of anger. But it's not the end of the story. But because of God's great love for us, God, who's rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ, even when we were dead in transgressions. We should have been thrown away, discarded, because we turned on the very goodness of God. But He is great in love. He is rich in mercy. And it is by grace we have been saved. That's why it's amazing. And God raised us up with Christ and seated us with Him in the heavenly realms in Christ Jesus, in order that the coming ages He might show the incomparable riches of His grace expressed in His kindness to us in Christ Jesus. God has a purpose in all this, and it is to express just how overwhelming His grace is, just how much He loves us to a degree that we can hardly comprehend. In fact, the next verse, it is by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not from yourselves. You didn't manifest this kind of belief. You didn't make this faith up. It couldn't be that way. This is a grace that goes beyond understanding. It is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. You can't say, hey, I did this. Hey, this is something I accomplished. Hey, look at this great negotiation I have with God. Hey, my family has a better deal than your family because I negotiated this contract. No way. It doesn't work that way. It's for every man, woman, and child, the grace and the goodness of God. And that's what's beautiful about this. It is by grace you've been saved, he says, through faith. Not something you made on your own, but it's the gift of God alone that frees you, that gives you that, so that none of us can boast. None of us can be like, hey, look at how good my faith is. Look at how good my deal is I got with God. No, we all got the same deal. We all got the same beautiful gift. How will you determine where you stand with God? How do you judge that? How do you measure that? How are you going to determine? This is the question for you today. How are you going to determine where you stand with God? And there's two ways to do this, really. The first way, you can say, look, my actions. I'm good these amount of days. I was bad these amount of days. And a lot of us have that in our head, that God's got some ledger book, and he's like putting checks in the good column when we help little old ladies across the street, and he's putting checks in the bad column when we lie or cheat or steal or unethical. And at the end of the day, it's going to be, do we have more good checks than bad checks? I mean, that's so prevalent. That concept or a version of that is so prevalent in almost every movie that talks about the afterlife, in almost every book that talks about the afterlife. You have these concepts that God is some great, like he's got nothing better to do than just to constantly mark down all day your good and your bad things. And then hopefully in the end, if you measure up, you'll make it through. That's really what some of us think. That's one way to think about it. The other way is to say, you know what? It's God's grace. God determines where I stand with him based on his grace, because it can't be both. It's not grace. If it's both, it's not grace. If it's your works and what you can do or what you didn't do, right? That's not grace. Grace operates on its own platform, completely absent of your actions, because it's from God. It's his gift to you. God's grace for you. The problem is with the religious approach, as soon as you start to tip the scales one way or the other, as soon as you're able to step on the scale and tip it one way or the other, that's not grace anymore. And that's virtually every religious system in the world, is that you are in charge. You are the king of your kingdom. You are making these things happen. And it's very empowering to think that, like, oh, yes, I am. It's just not true, because that's not grace from God. That's not how that would work. God has given us a great gift in Jesus, but here's the thing. He's not given us a set of rules to follow that exactly make us right with him. And people, you might say, well, what about the Ten Commandments? Well, as we talked about last week, those were rules that were given to a specific set of people in a specific circumstance to help them stay on the path to God. They were not given to the entire world to help them find God. That is not what the Ten Commandments are for. So I say, well, what about the Bible? Got the whole Bible here. Well, the problem is the Bible is, as I have mentioned in week 1, a set of letters that have been compiled into a book, but it's not a book written by one author, so it doesn't have a cohesive flow a lot of the time, doesn't have one set of standards for you to follow. In fact, at some points you can say, this looks a little bit out of whack here. I don't know what I would do, so the Bible's not that. What about Jesus' teachings? That's just New Testament. That's shorter. True. But you read the Sermon on the Mount yet? You read the Beatitudes? You read some of the things Jesus says in the parables? You think you can follow all of those rules and you can be perfect? I mean, that's really what you're saying. If you're saying that rules are how you're going to get to God, you're saying, I can beat this that no human in history has ever done. I can be perfect. I mean, more power to you. I cannot do that, and that's not God's plan for us. And hint, I'm pretty sure no one can do that, but except Jesus. So that's the problem. We tend to then, in the light of all this, say, well, and we give ourselves exception after exception and say, well, look, I'm just going to come up with my own rules, right? What am I going to do? Rule number 1, be nice to everyone. That sounds good. Rule number 2, don't kill people. Rule number 3, tell the truth most of the time, Unless someone says, hey, do I look good in this? Or, hey, do you like my haircut? Or, hey, what do you think about this? And then we have to, and break that one. And then we stop. We're like, that sounds pretty good. Be nice, don't kill people. Mostly be truthful. Be a good person. Oh, I've heard that one too. Yeah. Be a good person. Whatever that means. And then you're like, well, what does that mean? Does that mean, be a good person is so generic. But we think, well, that covers it. That's generic enough. It covers it. Be nice. Be a good person. Don't kill people. Well, you've just made your own rules at that point. So now you're completely out of the system of the Creator, completely out of the system God has made because you've made your own rules. And the problem is, even with those dumbed down, simplistic rules, most of the time you don't keep those. Be a good person until someone takes something from me and right? Tell the truth mostly, like I said, until someone says, do I look fat in this? And you're like, no, you look great. Right? That's the problem. You make your own set of rules that you can't even follow. And that's not what you're intended to do. You're intended to receive a gift, not try to negotiate. So at the end of the day, God doesn't need anything from you. He wants something for you. God doesn't need anything from you. He wants something for you. And this is the central truth of today's teaching. This is something you have to own if you're to understand grace. John Newton, in his song Amazing Grace, said it like this: "Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace has brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home." If we were to summarize the big things we read today in Ephesians 2, it would be this: because of His great love, God's great love for us, it is by His grace you've been saved, because it is the gift of God. The amazing good news, the amazing grace that we're talking about today then, is very simply this: there's no more guessing. You don't have to guess, you don't have to wonder, you don't have to struggle, you don't have to negotiate and write up contracts and say, you do this, God, and I'll do this. You don't have to worry about any of that. The worry part, the anxiety part is gone. There's no guessing, there's no wondering, there's no gut-wrenching, there's no clenching your teeth, there's no staying up all night fearing this. Here it is, very simple. Jesus is the gift of God for you, given 100% free to you. You can't buy it in a store. You can't do enough good deeds to earn it. It is completely irrelevant what your works are for this gift to work, for this gift to have your name on it. But the problem is, so many times it goes unopened. It is a gift just waiting for you. It isn't based on your faith. It is a gift of God for you. Before you were ever created, God made this gift for you, put your name on it, and it awaits you right now. The only action, if you want to call it an action, is you to receive the gift, to say thank you, say yes, open the gift, receive the gift. Understand the gift is for you. Without negotiation, it is a free gift. Now, the process of the rules help you, once you've received the gift, to stay on the path towards becoming more like Jesus. Because if you get that gift, that's clearly what you would want to do, is say, wow, I want to be more like the source of this gift once I have that understanding. But the rules don't exist before then for you. They're not helpful for you before that. This is the starting point. What will you do with the gift God has intended for you? And that's what I want to pray for you today. So would you pray that with me? And perhaps this is the first time you've ever prayed this prayer. Very simply, you would just say, God, I don't want to negotiate anymore. I don't want to guess or wonder. I want to understand this good news is a gift of grace for me. This unconditional grace that I can't merit, I can't earn, I can't purchase, and no one can take away. God, I want to know this with 100% of my being and fiber, that I am loved. So I say yes to you, Jesus. Yes, from this moment forward, I will follow you. I will accept this gift. And may I follow you for the rest of my life. I pray that today in Jesus' name. Amen. As usual, I want to give you a little bit of homework, and that is just a couple of questions here to think about this week. Do this in your groups or do this maybe at lunch today or dinner tonight or tomorrow with some friends at work or whenever you get to do this, just think about this topic for a minute. Most people respond to the idea of this unconditional grace we've talked about today with the, but what about, and they always have a hang up with unconditional grace. God can't really love me. What about if I do this? What about this? What about this situation? So what is your but what about moment? What is your hang up with unconditional grace? What makes it difficult for you to accept the unconditional grace of God? So I want you to think about that this week and use that kind of as your focal point to think about. We've given you the opportunity to pray. If you didn't pray with me just then, you can pray anytime this week in any words you want. God is listening to you. And he's very much like the Father we talked about a couple weeks ago. Jesus gave us this beautiful parable of the Father looking for the Son who's lost. He's waiting for you. God is just waiting for you to say yes. And so he's always listening and ready for you if you're ready to receive his Son Jesus as that beautiful gift of grace that is free to you, that frees you from the burdens of this world. And so I hope that you will say yes to that. Next Sunday, we're going to talk about, okay, I've followed Jesus. That's the starting point. I have said who Jesus is now. I've answered the question, what's next? Like, what do I do now? And I kind of alluded to it today a little bit, talk about the word discipleship. But what does it mean to believe? And what does that look like? So belief and how that drives our actions is what we'll talk about next week. A very practical part of our series this next Sunday as we talk about what does it mean to move forward. So in part 4, we're going to talk about don't stop believing. That's kind of the concept there. But what does it look like to, once I start taking those steps of faith, what does that look like? There's lots of problems in our world, and we can look for evidence to support what's true, and we can have beliefs, and we can debate beliefs. I know I see a lot of people debating religious beliefs. But at the end of the day, how do we live in faith? Like, if starting point is all about faith, then what is the future? What are the baby steps look like to growing? And then what do I do to continue to grow? So we'll talk about belief and faith and how all that works together next week. Hope you can join us for that. A brief reminder to check out the family content at CoffeeCreek.Church/kids. If you have kiddos, make sure that you are looking at this stuff. It is awesome. They will have a great time with it. It is music, games, and amazing Jesus-centered teaching every single week for kids of all ages, birth through 5th grade. And we would love for you to check that out as a free gift to you, and that is fresh content every single week. If you want to help us out, keep this broadcast going strong, you can give online at ccgive.com, or you can text in to give any gift to the number 84321. Last but not least, we have a free gift for you today. If you'd like more information on what I talked about today and how do you know how you measure up to God and what that looks like and what faith is about, we have this free book for you called How Good is Good Enough. It is available just by texting the word book, B-O-O-K. You don't need the quotation marks there. Just text it to 405-708-7341, and we would love to get this in the mail to you today. We're going to end on a beautiful song, Amazing Grace, and this is kind of a new rendition of it, but it really goes well with what we talked about today. So the words will be on the screen if you'd like to sing, especially if you're by yourself at home. You can sing as loud as you'd like. I do that sometimes, but if you're with a group of people, feel free to sing or feel free to just watch the words and listen to this beautiful song as it once again recounts God's beautiful and amazing grace for you and for me.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear. In grace, my fears relieved. How the hour I first believed. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior, has ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy reigns. Unending love, amazing grace. The Lord has promised good to me. His word, my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be, as long as life endures. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior, has ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy reigns. Unending love, amazing grace. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior, has ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy reigns. Unending love, amazing grace. The earth shall soon dissolve like snow. The sun forbear to shine, but God who called me here below will be